Welcome to What's Left, a weekly political discussion challenging the mainstream left. I'm Eduardo Abarca with co-host, teacher and socialist Andy Lipson, and our contributor and community organizer, Gema Sotomayor. Welcome back. It's been a while since we've actually caught up with Gema on these episodes, so that's exciting. We'll see what it brings today. We are online at what-s-left.webnode.com. And a quick reminder for folks, if you please just can rate, review, and subscribe, that would be wonderful. And turn on your notifications. So today we'll be discussing, does voting matter? To vote or not to vote? That is a question. For folks that have been following us for some time now, they may have seen that we did 2 years ago, was it, Andy? Some similar episode, but things have changed and evolved since then, and there's always something new we can bring about to the discussion, as well as we didn't have Gema at that time. Exactly. So there's always going to be something fresh when you have Gema.
Yes.
You never know what you're going to get. Box of chocolate.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll start off with why we think this is important. As I said, that we are now sort of doing this episode on a different take. Do you want to say, Andy, why that might be from your position?
I mean, one of the reasons is because, Em and I were at Chevy's talking, right? And, we were talking about our different opinions about voting. And, Gema, listens to What's Left and said that she'd be interested in talking with us about this subject matter, particularly in the context of this election, because, I'm going to repeat the fact that I don't think people should vote, as I did 2 years ago. But I think it's harder now because everyone's even raised it to even more importance, and so I think it's worth kind of taking another bite at the apple and discussing it again. And I definitely want to hear where Gema's coming from on this, and see where it takes the discussion.
Yeah, and I wanted to talk about it because in the circles that I'm in, I feel the pressure to vote. And even today, I have a couple of friends that continuously are sending me, you have to vote, it's super important. And again, just like every single year, this is the most important election there is. And I took a hard stand why I'm not planning on voting, why I'm not going to vote, why I'm not going to partake. And and unlike Andy, who has very specific reasons as to why he doesn't, I used to vote. I believe in voting, but I'm not going to vote. And I'm of the mentality, like I was telling Eduardo in a separate conversation, is change my mind. At the end of the day, I think that that's what this platform was for. It's to have discussions, it's to expand our knowledge base, to be willing to hear other opinions and kind of think, maybe I should question some of these things. Maybe I should think outside of the box. And that's really why I'm here. I'm very, very convinced of my decision. I'm very much, this is my decision. You're not going to persuade me otherwise. But I still think, again, change my mind, cement where I'm feeling.
So I will try to maintain myself with a serious face, as I have. Maybe our listeners cannot see, but if they go onto YouTube, they can view this. I'm in a Halloween costume that I created. Not created, but that I just put up quickly.
Well, you can always say that if Gema doesn't vote, she'll have to walk the plank.
Dad joke. Yeah, you could say that.
Because I'm a pirate, in case viewers didn't know. So I'll state why I think it's important, and then we can go into arguing for, against. Let's see where this goes. We have 3 different takes, obviously, and I'm really very, very curious as to where Gema stands and why. And so I'm looking at Gema today. So I say to everyone, I know that this system is screwed up, that this system serves mostly the elite and the ruling class, that this system is to pick those that have money on both sides of a binary system in the USA, which mostly are Democrats and Republicans. I understand. And I'm not here to try to excuse or speak for or to ask you to vote for a candidate that is going to be corrupt, that is corrupt actually and has been. And I'm not here to convince you that your voting actually matters in the presidential election when the Electoral College is the most sought after used weapon in for the Democrats and Republicans rigging votes. And I know that the popular vote is often most ignored. And we've also covered as to sometimes some of these votes actually may be tainted and I know there's voter fraud and voter tampering. I'm not here to try to sugarcoat those things. I think most voters are quite smart to know that. And I understand why people are disengaged. And I understand why people are just resigned and not interested. What I am going to be asking most people to consider is what affects them directly and what parts of a ballot is maybe considerable enough for you to decide to take yourself to the ballot box or to register, even if it means to take on just to have some resources allocated to you in your community, or to save the environment, or to make sure that you have a candidate that may be authentic in your district and wherever you live, in what county of whatever part of. I'm mostly speaking to Californian voters here because I don't know how other counties are organized in other states. So the local measures and propositions and candidates are really what I look at, mostly at what things could affect us in the long term as we try to, and I would love for people to look at a transition from this system to a more collective system. But that's a separate issue. And I'm just trying to make sure people understand there's always something on a ballot that will affect you directly or your community. So I will speak to those points, and I hope that it's convincing enough. But if I don't, well, I'm not the right person for it. So I'll stop there.
Fair enough. Do you want me to start, Lipson, or do you want to kind of give your point?
Nah, you should go.
We're gonna get to it already. All right, let's get to this. I want to start off by saying that the first year that I voted on a presidential election was the 2008. And we all know what 2008 was like. I mean, that was Obama, hope, change, and I remember being very excited. And at that time, I actually did take time to research, to read up, to get the pamphlet with all the propositions, with all the candidates, to read the pros and the cons, because I wanted to be an educated voter. I felt if there was going to be a time for change, this was it. And I had to do my part by researching. I had to do my part by making sure that my voice was heard. Was my voice heard? I mean, I guess. I don't think that I would have honestly made a difference. Everyone was on the Obama bandwagon. So really, not much to say there. And then I left the country. Now when I come back and we have President Trump and everyone is, saying, you got to vote, you got to vote, you got to vote, you got to vote. I don't want to vote. I don't care to vote. And I asked myself for the longest time why I didn't care to vote. And I realized this system is a fucking joke. And I realized it with an encounter that I had with a customer. I'm one of the customers who's from a southern state, very, very conservative man. He starts off the conversation by first asking where I'm from. I say from California, and he follows it up with, I'm so sorry for you. I used to live in California, and your guys' politics are a joke. I left. I would never go. California is the worst state to live in. And he then said, I want you to know that I voted. I didn't ask him, by the way. I don't ask my customers any of this. He said, I want you to know that I voted. And I'm Republican. I'm a proud Republican. But I didn't vote for that guy. I voted for Mickey Mouse. And the fact that he said that he voted for Mickey Mouse, I'm thinking, here is a smart man, because he also talked a little bit more about, how not all the states use electoral college. There are a couple states in the United States that actually do popular vote. And I think he said like Maine and Nebraska or Maryland, one of those three states, two of those three states. And he said that you need a push in your state for it to be popular vote, because if it was a popular vote in your state and not an electoral college, you guys would probably be red. And he was, of course, referring to like the Central Valley, to the parts of California that aren't Democratic, that are not Democrats. Mostly San Francisco Bay Area and Los Angeles. Everything else is pretty much Republican leaning in California. But the fact that even he saw this as a joke, but he decided to partake in it, made me think, if this is a joke and we're joking, we're going to put in Mickey Mouse, why even vote? And then it brought me to because everyone says it when I say it's a joke. They say, well, vote for the local election. There's a lot of propositions. There's people that are going to make a difference. To which I say, have you read those propositions? Have you asked the questions? Who's paying for this? Who's supervising this? What's the time frame to be rolled out? Who is this benefiting? Where are the checks and balances to this? Because it sounds great. Hey, let's save the environment. Vote yes on Prop X. Hey, let's feed the poor. Let's fund $20 million to, house homelessness. Great. Where's the money coming from? Because in the past elections, when I have voted, I have seen that it's come out of making budget cuts to education, taxing people that can't afford to pay higher taxes, low income people or middle class, not really a tax on high earners, or not a significant amount, at least I would say. Or their projects get voted and it takes so many years for the money to actually get put in that people forget to actually follow through and to execute. And then you have this money kind of stuck in an area it's not being done. There's a bigger problem, and voting is not going to fix it. And I don't want to waste my time doing all this legwork to try to read between the lines to really uncover what you're really trying to tell me with this proposition, why you're wording it this way, what are you not telling me, to not even really make that much of an impact. I'd rather spend that energy organizing my community, helping directly the people that need it. That's where my energy needs to be spent, not doing research for something I'm going to get fucked anyways. So that's my take on it.
Or no?
Well, like I said when I first stated the importance of voting, there's always some measure, some proposition that affects you directly. And some measures aren't always about funding. Sometimes it's about amending certain things. We have in a measure here in San Francisco where we are asking folks on Proposition C to change the requirements for folks such as San Francisco claims to be a sanctuary city. But there are many boards and commissions and there's a list that I can go through that are on that are here in San Francisco, that are the Children's, Youth, and Their Families Oversight Advisory Committee, the Immigrant Rights Commission. These commissions and boards sometimes don't allow, in San Francisco, they do not currently allow for anyone that doesn't have, who is not a U.S. citizen, to participate in those commissions and boards. If anyone from your community, Gema, that was undocumented and wanted to be a voice in one of the committees like the Children, Youth, and Their Families Oversight and Advisory Committee, they wouldn't be able to speak for their community because if they are undocumented, then that's not part of the requirement is to be a U.S. citizen. And Proposition C would be just amending that and giving all of San Franciscans, to regardless of immigration status, a voice, representation, and equal rights to serve on boards and commissions. It's as simple as that. You may not agree with the funding, you may not be sure about where other areas are, but I just picked up one of the most simplest, and this is on the proposition for this November. It's almost simple. There's just sometimes changes to requirements. And that's as far as you can, if you want to go, you can go. There's always something that will affect your community. That has no outside interest. It's just something San Francisco said. Hey, we realize that a lot of people from your community are not able to participate in this board or this committee because they're undocumented. So the mayor is saying, and the supervisor is saying, voters, do you want to include undocumented people? Vote for it. It's as simple as that. That one, I don't know how else you could go wrong with that, or what candidate you can. I mean, if you're going to talk about candidates, not you, if anyone's going to talk about candidates, it's as simple as that one. So, like I said, there's always a measure, there's always a proposition that does affect you directly and can have an impact if you wanted to.
Sorry,
I'm just going.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Here's why. If I had to vote for that, I don't want to vote for that. You're asking me to vote on a proposition that is being pushed by a mayor and by city politics that don't really give a fuck about us, because if they did, they have so much more power to be able to cause change. So the fact that they're pushing this proposition lets me know that you're either doing this to save grace, to say, oh, but look, we push this, we're really liberals, or you're setting us up for failure because you're asking people that have no idea what the political system is like in the city or in the United States to partake in a system that has failed them and has never allowed them to have a voice. You're going to either overwhelm them and burn them out, or you're going to manipulate them, only given specific information that you want to persuade them to vote the way that you want. Look, I know this is wrong, and people will shame me and people will cancel me. What's new? It's the same reason why I don't believe that every single person should be allowed to be a juror. You are participating in a system that most people have no idea how it works, and criminalizing and sending people to jail. I understand, and I don't know what these committees do. I really don't. I'm going to lead off by saying that. But if you're telling me that someone politically is wanting to give someone a voice when they really don't do anything to really give them a voice, but you want to give them a title or maybe a little, I'm sorry to diminish if people are on it, a board that maybe has no change, I'm going to be wary of it. And with more of a reason, I'm going to want to protect my people. I'm going to say, why do you want to give them a voice? What is it going to be used for? How are you going to interpret that? How are you going to protect them? Are you going to tell them what they're doing and what it's for and how it works? You know? So with more of a reason, I would say no. Sometimes silence is louder than words. And I like to think that I've already voted. I've already organized. I've already read up. None of that is doing anything. So I'm going to try something new. I might be wrong. I might change my opinion in a couple of years. Right now, I think this is the best time we can all take. Just give them a big fuck you. We're not going to play your fucking game. Figure your shit out.
If anyone, if one does not vote,
it's okay, I don't care.
No, I'm just saying, because the reason why I want to stay away from you directly, Gema, is because I'm sure there are lots of people like you out there who may or may not be listening to this who have expressed the very same sentiment. So the way I see it is, it's beyond you. You're like a representation of many non-voters like that. So that I'm speaking to you and to any non-voter. If you do not voice and your opinion, someone else will. If you don't fill in the space, someone else will fill it in for you. Someone else always fills it in for you. So if someone is not on those advisory boards or those committees, if someone is not running, if someone is not voting for the proposition, like Proposition 22 for Uber and
Lyft. You're combining them. I see what you're doing.
Sorry, Uber and Lyft and other app-based gigs, the economy. If someone is not filling it, someone else is going to fill it in for you. And elections have consequences. If you do not, voice that your opinion, you don't show. This is one of many. I'm not saying that this is the only thing people should do. That's what scares me about this, because I see record number of voters coming out, and which is sort of okay, it's fine, it's wonderful, but I'm just afraid how many of those are going to stick through in the line of politics. So, but this is one way to show that we need to do something about our streets, our schools. You know, Gema, you are a community organizer.
Yeah, but don't say that. Don't tell people that. It's a secret. I'm fucking with you. Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Uh-huh.
I asked someone else, our other our co-host once. You mostly work with undocumented people, yes? I'm just trying to figure out, and I don't mean to say it this way, but
say it. Just drop it like
most of your are most of your community members wealthy, or go to private school, or do they have? Are they just filled with cash that they don't need resources from the city?
No, but the city's not giving them shit. You know who's giving them shit? Small groups, like the one that I belong to, like the one that Kenny belongs to, like the one that Gabriela belongs to. The city's not doing shit. I can tell you right now, the city is not doing shit.
Do the kids go to school?
Yeah.
Do they go to public school?
Yes.
That's a resource from
the city. No,
that's a resource from the government.
But that's a resource from the government. Those are not at all. That's money that the taxpayers
That's a resource.
Yeah, and if you want
and
to
how do you
how
do you allocate resources? How do you allocate money, funds?
Mm-hmm.
Proposition A, Proposition G. There are resources that have been. There are taxes that are being placed onto homeowners, onto commercial businesses. There are taxes that are allocating that funding to schools to be able to pay teachers, to be able to pay Andy to teach, to be able to require more funding for more training. There are resources at schools that students use. At where I used to work at, if we didn't have funding for our social worker, if we didn't have funding from our social worker, from a nonprofit, which the nonprofit garnered much of their funding from the city and county. If we don't have social workers, if we don't have free meals, that's what I'm saying. You're don't tell me that your community doesn't use the resources from the city, as well as healthcare. We have one of the best healthcare in San Francisco. It's not compared to what I would like to see ideally, but it is the best in regards to other cities because it is universal healthcare, and we're pushing for universal child care as well here in San Francisco.
So let me respond to everything that you said. Public schools here are a joke. No offense, Lipson. They're a joke. The amount of funding that they're getting is even more of a joke, because the classroom sizes keep increasing. The quality of classroom or education that they're receiving is bullshit. And so you're telling me to say, oh, thank you for giving me your crumbs. Thank you for giving me the bare minimums. I will continue to play your game because at least I'm getting this. No. And you, in all reality, Eduardo, and the coalition that we work with to feed, I think we probably feed.
Well, I know Gabriela would vote, by the way.
Oh, you'd be surprised. Because, and I'll explain. The amount
of people campaigning for someone I know.
Yeah. The amount of people that her coalition feeds is probably around between 100 to 150 households per week. And this has not been through government money. On the contrary, food banks said no, they would no longer work with her because she needed to provide information about the people that were getting the food. The local politics money that was deviated to help people that were impacted by COVID became, we're only helping, it fell into the identity politics. We're only helping our people. And so you see a lot of people, mostly African-American homeless people, being out of those conversations, not getting that food. So what happened? It literally had to be a community effort of small donors, community saves the community, and I've seen it right now here in COVID. And that's how these people are being fed. It's not because they're going to the public school, they're going to Mission High School and they're getting their free lunch that they would have gotten if they would have been going to school. It's not that. They're not getting that.
Do any of them live in rent control units?
No. 15 people to a rent control unit? Sure. Let's go with that. 15 people to a rent control unit. And if you're telling me that those propositions are going to be paid by homeowners, you mean the people that can't keep up with their mortgages? By commercial businesses, you mean the mom and pop shops that are closing because they can't be open? I'm not going to vote for that. I'm not going to help. I'm not going to cure one evil by causing another harm. If you tell me we're going to tax Amazon, Microsoft,
I was just going there.
Apple, I will say, yeah, fuck it, let's do it. And not just the company. I'm talking about those Bezos. Let's tax those people, because even if you tax a company, what is the company going to do? Oh, sorry, no pay raise for you guys. We're going to have to cut your guys' benefit because we're being taxed.
Yeah.
So that's my issue. I want to be clear. I think voting is important. I think having a voice, having these conversations, reading, getting educated, you have to have a voice. Don't be a bystander.
I guess I'm confused. You say that voting is important, but you're not going to vote?
Because this system's a fucking joke. I think it's important to eat. That doesn't mean I'm going to eat a piece of shit that's spoiling, rotting on the side.
But what are you voting for then, if you think
I'm
it's
not
important?
voting. I'd rather put my energy to make real change in my community, to provide immediate response, immediate help that these people need. They can't wait 6 months till we vote, till they roll out the budget. People can't wait that, Eduardo. And why can't they wait that? Because our politics has put them in a position where they don't have a buffer. They really cannot wait. And if we keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result, then isn't that the definition of crazy? Isn't that what people say? Doing the same thing, expecting different results?
Mm-hmm. You just don't think, so you don't think like a Proposition 22, which is what Uber and Lyft and DoorDash are paying for. They paid to put that on a measure, and you don't think that will to protect the workers who are using those apps to give people rides.
I don't know enough. I don't do Uber. I don't do Lyft. I don't know that people are going to be impacted. I haven't done my research. I don't feel that I should vote on a measure that I know nothing about. But it does alarm me, the amount of money that has been going into marketing Proposition 22.
Yeah.
It's already a red flag.
Which is from Uber and Lyft, because they're trying to pass that proposition for themselves, right? And the people who are most affected are the workers who are using that gig economy, and they would like to have benefits such as healthcare benefits. They would like to have, they would like to be treated as employees. And right now, Uber, Lyft, and DoorDash are screwing those workers. Is that not something that you think it matters?
It matters, Eduardo. It matters. I'm not.
Then why not vote against it? Why not vote against it?
You're telling me that that's what it is. I don't know that that's what it is. I'm not going to take your word for it, which is a lot of the city politics. Somebody tells you, and I see it all the time, and I'm sorry for all the politically influential people of the city that put voter pamphlets, vote yes on this, no on this, and people will call those and vote with those. Do your own research.
But
so I'm not going to take your word for it, and I don't want to do the research. I don't got time for that, so I'm not going to vote on it.
Wait, so I guess I'm wondering. So you say that? I mean, I could tell you what it is, but you won't even trust what I say, right?
No. Why should I?
So I guess I'm wondering then, how can you say that it doesn't matter? How do you say voting doesn't matter if you don't look into it? If you don't, I guess
I'm saying voting absolutely matters. It absolutely matters, Eduardo. What I'm saying is, I know that it matters so much that I'm not going to taint it by voting on some stupid bullshit joke that's flawed, I'm not going to partake in that, because I know it's important. When there's an actual system that actually, like, for example, Lipson's union stuff, I would vote for that.
Mm-hmm.
I would vote for something that I have direct control over, that I could hold accountability on. I'm not going to vote on stuff that I have no say on.
Mm-hmm. well, unions do endorse propositions as well, and you'd still have some
Yeah,
way
and they're so
to
fucking
find them
corrupt.
connect,
And they're
right?
so corrupt.
So I'm just saying that it's all tied together. So,
but do you see how that is all? Do you see how the system is so broken in that? Because unions get paid to sponsor props.
not always. No, they don't
You're
always
telling
get
me
paid.
they don't get favors. They don't get a better vote. They don't get an insight into what's going on. They do. They do, Eduardo. This is all a game. This is all a game. And I've learned it from being in it.
I don't understand where I mean, you've said some outlandish things right now. So you're saying,
I always do.
I'm just wondering then, where do you get your information from if you're saying that they get paid? And I'm telling you,
I used to be a janitor. When I got into that union, you know, when you go into a union, you pay your dues, and there's a bylaw, and the bylaws pretty much say you're put on a wait list. It's based on seniority. They're going to position you. They're going to put you into certain places. And because of the fact that I spoke English and I passed all the background checks, I was able to bypass that wait list to get into like these, like the Transamerica pyramid, like these places that require additional background check. However, for the other items, the ones that didn't require that, the people that got those positions were the people that were buddies with the president, and the president had, and this was commonly known. She would be getting money. She would be getting not paid to the union, paid to her, who is the president of the union, to make certain decisions that went against us. Mm-hmm. And that's what I mean when I say that's one case. Maybe she was a rotting apple. Maybe the rest of the unions are good. Listen, I'm not part of the union at this point, so I couldn't speak to it. Listen, that's you.
I'll just say one thing. Gema, I want to come back to you because I just want to say one thing. Mm-hmm. My union raises $6 million a year from our members' dues. Mm-hmm. How much of that goes to an affiliate union, CTA, California Teachers Association, or NEA, National Educators Association, or AFL, the AFL, or the CFT? Of that $6 million, how much of that goes up to these basically people who are directly connected to the Democratic Party or the politicians? How much of the $6 million?
Even if it's 1 million, that's too much.
How much of the $6 million goes?
500,000.
Okay, good. Thank you, Eduardo. You have a guess?
Why don't you tell us, Andy?
3.5 million. More than half of our dues goes straight up. And where do you think that money goes? Yes, it goes into conferences and paying lawyers and paying the fees of all these people who make six figures. It goes directly into the coffers of the Democratic Party. That's where it goes, to fight for education. It's a sham. It's a well, I'll just leave it at that.
I curse all the time.
Anyway, I'll leave it at that because Gema, you were doing fine.
But Gema was saying though that, and I actually would suspect that this happens where endorsements are paid. But do you know, Andy, if your union, if UESF has been paid to endorse?
No, I mean UESF is part of a funnel system for taking our money and directing it upwards so that we can get.
But has UESF been paid to endorse?
What I'm saying, which is what I say is that I wouldn't be surprised if, like, let's say me running for District 8. So I am going to give money, or I'm going to make a large donation to a Christian school so they can endorse me. That's what he's saying, right?
Yep.
Well, I actually didn't say it. You said it, Gema.
Yeah, because it happens, Eduardo. Because that's how politics here happens.
I meant, so Andy, given that you're in the union and you like to look into these things, maybe you can tell us, does UESF get paid to endorse?
He's not going to call USF. He's not going to call his own union.
I don't know. It's criminal that half of our dues goes to the Democratic Party through our union. That's a criminal act.
You've stated that, but I'm wondering if UESF gets paid to endorse.
Gema, I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Are you a socialist?
No.
No. Are you would you call yourself an anti-capitalist?
No.
No.
You're kidding me? Look at where I live. Look at my room. Look at me.
Yeah.
No.
But I will say that I agree with every single thing you have said. The only thing, Eduardo, that I agree with you on is when you said elections matter. And not just Proposition 22 or Prop I. The entire election thing matters. The thing is, you don't understand how much it matters. You think it's about making these surface changes and trying to make the house that's completely destroyed, because you said the system was screwed up. Screwed up suggests that it can be fixed. Gema said, no, it's a joke. It's a complete wipeout. That's what the system is. It is a complete wipeout. It cannot be fixed. But the partial role, one of the reasons elections are so important is to hide that fact. It is to hide the fact from us that this thing is completely broken. It is completely corrupt. It is completely working against you. But we're going to try to get you to buy in to passing a law that's going to ultimately be used to screw you over, or get you to think within the narrow confines of issue 22. Do you allow workers to have some health care that the Uber is promising them, but they lose the right to be called themselves worker and organized? Or do you vote no on it? They don't get the health care, but maybe they'll get organized some point in time. Which one are you going to vote for? Which devil's bargain are you going to take? Neither of those is any good. A student of mine, as a gig worker, called me and said, hey, can I get you to vote for that? I said, no, I won't vote for it. Are you going to vote or vote against it? I'm not going to vote against it either. My union is telling me to go vote against it. Fuck off. Strike. That's what I'd say. Why are you spending $3 billion of our dollars per year with not striking? If we want to get those people organized, then we should go on a strike. That's the way you do it. You have to take it in your own hands. And that's what Gema's talking about. You have said over and over again, well, don't you think this is important? She's saying it's not important. She is actually doing what's important. Elections are part of fooling people into thinking that this charade over here is important. And it's not just pulling a lever. It's year after year of information. Who's going to get in Congress? Who's going to take back Sacramento? Every year, the same drumbeat. And every year, we are getting screwed over. And it's what's happening to us is the longer we stay involved in this game, the longer we stay out of trying to find an actual solution. Because Gema and I agree completely on elections, but we don't agree on the solution.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of work for workers to do to figure that stuff out. I guarantee you, if you open an election pamphlet to try to figure anything out, it's going to completely fuck your mind over. You're not going to learn anything about what you're going to need to do to save yourself. And like you said, around the representation of getting an immigrant to figure out how they can be a capitalist representative so they can figure out how to use immigrants to screw over other immigrants. What a wonderful thing to do. That's what it's going to be, because we know things are going to get worse for immigrants, because we've seen what's happening to wealth in this country, and we know what happens when wealth gets directed upwards. Immigrants get blamed. That's what's going to happen.
Advisory boards and committees are not always within business capitalist.
They aren't. They're
areas.
outside of that. Absolutely. They don't allow them to control that. The dictatorship we live in not only doesn't really give us a true of elections around anything that actually matters to us, it keeps us completely out of the realm of the one area that Gema's people are getting, and all people are getting robbed in daily, which is wage slavery, which is wage work. They're getting screwed every day, not getting back the value of their work. And they don't ever get to vote on that. They will not get to vote on that. You have to make a revolution the only way you can vote on that is make a revolution. And looking at a voter manual is the opposite of preparing yourself for the things you need to prepare yourself for making a revolution. The things you would need to do are what Gema's talking about, which is I've got to figure out how I'm organizing with my community to figure out how we strengthen ourselves, and then do that in connection with other people doing that. Unfortunately, one of the tragedies of this election is that space is shrunk down even narrower, to the point where everyone's either Trump or Biden. And that's a tragedy, and that means bad things for the working class, no matter who wins in this election. Because the other thing I don't agree with you on is it's not just a few things that affect us in the ballot. Every single one of those things is going to affect us. Every single one of those things is going to screw us over. But can they get people to agree to it? Can they get people to consent on it? You can, if you can get them to vote for it. And that's the magic thing our system does.
Where I think that I'm still trying to figure out, even if you agree with Gema, is that you know, I'm trying to figure out with Gema why she says that she's not going to vote because it doesn't matter, but you don't even know like what's on the proposition. I guess that's what I'm trying to figure out.
That's not what I'm saying, Eduardo. I think voting matters, and I've said it, and I'm going to continue to say voting.
But like a Proposition 22, where the workers are getting screwed because they want to try to get basic rights and protections such as paid sick leave or in workers' comp or unemployment benefits. This isn't something that is this important to you?
It's important to me. What's not important to me, and I think this is where we're missing the mark, Eduardo, is how are they going to make that happen? Are they going to give the employees those benefits by taxing them, by cutting their wages? Are they going to make it so that they're forced to work 80 hours? Are they going to make it so that you have to sign up for this particular thing here, but you can't do that? And these are the questions that these ballots don't tell you, that those things, but they're there. Someone has
those things are available. If you just did some research, they're available. I can even see it now. I'm not going to read everything, but I'm looking at it even now at the proposition, and it's available to you. It's there if you wanted to know. It's not like, I guess I'm trying to figure out, do you think that people are hiding things from you?
Yes, absolutely. People are hiding,
But how do you, if you say that if they're hiding it but you tell me you don't even do your homework to look into it, how do you know if they're hiding stuff from you unless you actually tell me concretely what areas are sort of obscured?
So let's go with that. Listen, what proposition right now is going through that's supposed to close a loophole that prevented from the funding that was approved like 5 elections ago for additional funding for the public system?
Oh, you mean the thing that's trying to close down Prop 13?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember what the proposition's name, but there's one that's being talked about to try to close the loophole for Prop 13.
Because we had voted to provide additional funding for education, but there was a loophole that no one had accounted for that made it so that these funds that we had approved never actually got to the education system. So now, many, many years later,
you're asking though, so there is something called AB5 that was signed into law about how workers could be protected under the employee workers law. Mm-hmm. And you're asking how would these Lyft and Uber drivers be? They would be classified as employees of these big companies. And it would work in the same way that you're an employee. You get there are certain requirements that institution needs to provide for you as a worker. And these are sort of the same, different because they're different institutions, but under a law in California, they would still be treated as employees. Right now, they're contract workers and they're not even getting anything. And most of them are being just used.
I understand everything.
So then you don't, but it's okay for you under your institution to get those benefits, but not, what about them as workers? What if they would be able to be considered employees?
Now you're trying to say that because I have it and I'm refusing to vote, I'm refusing for them to have it, which is not at all what I'm saying.
I didn't say you're using I didn't say not that you refuse, not that you refuse, but if you don't stand up to your fellow, if you don't vote for your fellow worker, right? Because they're in the same economy as you are. And if you don't then say, well, I guess why am I having these benefits, but other workers are not? Then you would vote for those workers to have the very same rights that you have as an employee considered under California law. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't you think that would be fair, that both of you?
I don't think. I was
a gig worker, if I was a gig worker and you being an employee of a large institution, I think I would ask you to please vote in favor for me to have the same laws or rules to be applied to as an employee for me as well. I would want that as well. Wouldn't you want your fellow workers to have the same right?
Yes. And let me finish. I'm not saying that I don't want that. I'm not saying that I don't think.
But by not voting, you're allowing someone else to fill in the space for you.
Stop. What I'm saying is, this is important for everyone. I shouldn't have to vote on a proposition for this to be true, whether you're a contractor or not a contractor. So the fact that you're making me vote on something that's already a right that I should have, you're already looping me into something, making me think I'm going to get something. So you want me to vote on a right that should already be mine.
It should already be everyone's right. Yes,
so
I agree. But unfortunately, we have...
That's the problem. The problem is that it's not. And we're going to fix it by voting for you to give me my right?
The gig economy was something, part of the internet, right? That happened in the recent times. Your institution existed as an institution that has been here in California for very long. It's been a long-lasting institution. The gig economy has just been arising. To deal with sort of the way that this gig economy works in our established rules and regulations of the state, it came up as a conundrum. What do you do when you have a big employer like Uber or Lyft that wasn't necessarily went through the channels of becoming an employer through state regulation, but became sort of an independent employer out there? And now how do you mesh it and incorporate it onto an institution where people like Gema now is considered employee, but now contract workers can be considered employees? It's only trying to give these workers a chance to have the same benefits that Gema has. So I understand why you're saying everyone should have had it. Yes, but this brings up new challenges. Technology companies, things come up and new challenges are met. And we are now trying to deal with this conundrum as to what do we do when we have Uber and Lyft becoming so powerful. I mean, if you think about it, even just 5-10 years ago, we wouldn't have thought that this would have been one of the major employers because I think they are employers, right? They're not just some internet-based sharing app out there that you're pretending just to use to create community. They're actually big employers that, we that have sprouted through the internet. And that's what this tech life is like now. And your institution has lived long enough for it to be able to work under an institution, a larger apparatus that exists that considers you an employee. But this stuff is new, and now that it's trying to be meshed into this larger system, I think it's only fair, if I was an Uber worker, that I get the same benefits that you get as an employee.
So, Eduardo, here's the problem where you and I don't agree. We agree that they deserve it. Again, I'm not saying they don't. I'm not saying they shouldn't have it. They absolutely should. Here's where we disagree. It should not be up to my fellow citizens to decide whether or not I have these rights. These are my rights. You know what it should be up to? It should be up to and this is where I'm not a socialist. This is where my non-socialism comes in. This is where the court pretty much should come and sue directly Uber and Lyft and say, why haven't you given these people
It's funny you say
rights?
that, Gema, but then you say you don't even vote for candidates. And candidates are people who choose judges.
These candidates.
And so it's like you suddenly say that this should be in the courts, but even the courts people appoint people in court systems. And
we appointed
if
these
you're not voting, you don't have a say on how those courts sway their leanings onto what affects the rest of us.
Yeah.
So but then you're saying it should go through the courts. If it doesn't go through the people, it should go through the courts. But either way, it's still within the system of voting, right? Either vote for these propositions to happen, or you vote for candidates to appoint judges, or you can even in some places vote for judges. So how? I'm wondering. Then voting is still somewhere in there in this.
Again, Eduardo, I need you to remember, I believe in voting. I believe voting is important. Okay? Don't forget that, because I think you keep forgetting that when you bring these arguments.
But you're not voting. If you think it's so important, but you're not voting.
Why am I not voting, Eduardo?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, you tell me.
Well, I've been trying to. I'm not voting because what I'm voting in is a joke. It's not real. It's not.
So when do you ideally see that it would be best for us to vote? If you think it's so important, when do you think we should vote?
We should vote until the system gets fixed. I'm not going to partake in a system that doesn't work.
And what system is that, according to you?
How do I say it with being nice? Being nice. I'm trying to think of how do I say being nice. this is the most, and I don't have the words for it, Lipson, you'll probably come up with the words. If there was an opposite to a socialist dictatorship, that's what you're going to probably say capitalism. It's something to do with capitalism because money moves everything. It's not about what's right for the people. It's about who has the money, who can afford, the lobbyists. Why haven't we, and I don't know if it's still, but lobbyists are still a thing, right?
Yeah.
Like we haven't illegalized them?
No.
Okay.
This was the largest, this election is the largest amount of money in an election in U.S. history and doubles the amount of money that was in the 2016 election.
So if you're asking me to give you a solution, I don't have it. I have an idea.
So we should vote in some system that only exists, my love, in your fantasy.
No, on the contrary, we shouldn't vote to force that new system to be created by us.
Unfortunately, let me just reel it in. It's not going to happen anytime soon.
Why? It happened.
And in the meantime, workers are being screwed.
But why? And that's what I'm.
In the meantime, you're making it. It's being difficult. People, in order for people to be able to think about something, they need to be able to get off being so in survival mode that
Absolutely.
I think that some funding, some resources for them, allowing them to have a little bit of freedom to be able to expand their thoughts onto a larger system would have to be freed up from them. They would have to be freed up somewhat. And I don't know what system. I mean, you haven't articulated exactly the right kind of system.
I just will say this. She has articulated it. She's not calling it socialism, but she said her voice does not matter in this electoral system, but her voice does matter in the organization she's part of. I know
what system has she articulated? I want Gema to say it. It's like I'm asking for. It's
what directly affects. It's a vote where she knows the people she's voting with. She knows she sees them on the ground. It's a vote from below. It doesn't exist up here in the top.
What system is that, Gema?
I don't have a name for it, Eduardo. It's not socialism. I want to be clear because I lived in socialism, and I don't see where it's happened. It's definitely not socialism, but it's not this either. And I'm not gonna settle for the lesser of two evils. I'm not gonna choose with the way that you fuck me over. If you're gonna fuck me over, but I'm not gonna partake in this. I'm not consenting to this.
Right.
That's me voting.
Everything affects, even the tax on the soda that Andy doesn't want to be taxed. If he is not going to vote against it, or he is going to definitely get that tax. And I don't, then you don't complain about it later. You didn't have a say in it, no?
I want to be clear. I don't complain about it. I don't complain about it. I don't complain about being fucked. Okay?
There are things, though, that cannot be mitigated, like the environment. There are things that nature takes time to sort of build and nurture, and it doesn't spring up. You just can't buy land. It's like my mother recently was doing construction work here in the house. Not her, but we were doing construction work, and she was asked just to move a cable. And I have a garden, and the cable went right over my one flower that she just thinks it's a flower, but it was spent like 3 years growing these plants. And she's like, well, I'll pay for it. No, you can't pay 3 years. Like, it's already gone. You just destroyed. That's how I feel about the environment. If we do not take care of our natural resources, our environment, where forests take 300, 1,000 years, so many years, it takes thousands and thousands of years to develop to where they're at, like our redwood forest, like the Amazon, like the forest in Canada. If you do not put a stop to certain things, there's no way to mitigate that. And I said this in last time with Andy. Joshua Tree, one of the places that he loves, and it's down south, there's just 300 years of this national park has all of a sudden, it just will not come back the way that he would like that to come back, or anybody would like to appreciate those areas. And if you don't vote for some cap, some stop, some saying this is where we draw the lines, do not deforest these areas or our water systems, it will not be mitigated. No matter what system you believe in, Gema, no matter what system Andy believes in, by the time, whatever system anybody has, these environments will have been so damaged that there is no way to mitigate those losses. And that's why I'm saying a measure like the last time I mentioned, measure AA, or any measures or propositions that exist out there for people to vote for funding or for limiting areas of places to destroy, it does at least create some buffer to say, well, by the time a system like the one Gema wants or the one that Andy wants, we have something to live for. Once you said to me, Gema, if you don't live for what you like, if you don't appreciate it, if you don't have anything to live for, like, why just, you don't have anything to live for. You like, why even be involved in politics if you're not going to necessarily have any fun or live in the life that you only live once, no? Or, and I believe it's the same way. If I don't feel like I have any reason, for me personally, and I've said this to Andy in other episodes, if I don't feel like I have anything to fight for, which mostly for me, it's the environment. And yes, I care about human, but if I don't feel like I have anything to fight for, everything is just going to be screwed up, and everything is just desert land, it's a wasteland, then I don't feel like fighting for a socialism revolution. I don't have anything to fight for. There isn't anything I'm going to be. So if we don't actually vote for at least like for some 20-year, $12 parcel tax to raise approximately $25 million annually for funding restoration projects in the Bay, if these areas are not taken care of, if wildlife, we're in the sixth mass extinction. If animals are not being taken care of, I don't have any reason then. I don't know why I'm fighting. I don't know why I'm fighting for them. I don't want to fight for anything that there's nothing to fight for.
So I hear a lot of despair in your voice, in your tone of voice. And that despair is what leads me to believe that you think that the only way to solving it is by voting. And you feel
no,
like that's the last
that is not true.
option.
And I've said many times in this episode, that is not, I hope that is not the only thing people do. And that's what people put all of their eggs in one basket in, is the voting. And we should do more than voting.
But by you trying to tell people they have to vote, you're kind of leaning them, because most people don't have the luxury that you
I think people can chew gum. What's the expression? Chew gum and what's the expression? Chew gum and walk at the same time. I think people can recycle and at the same time fight against using these products at the larger level, at the larger scale. I mean, I don't know why it's one or the other.
It's not one or the other, Eduardo. It's because I think you have too much hope. And
I don't just have fantasy hope.
No.
There are measures there are measures. And if it wasn't, we can just go here in our backyard, in our redwood forest. If there weren't measures and propositions to hold back the deforesting companies, right? The lumber companies from taking so many redwoods, we would not have these redwood trees that we have today.
How many times
so there is actual concrete evidence that says, hold on. And if you go and visit those areas,
How many times have you voted on that?
It's thanks to people who voted for it. It's thanks to people who were passed.
My question is, how many times have those propositions come up on the ballot to save the environment? How many times?
They just came. They came up recently in years. They have so many measures that have come up. It's candidates who've also fought for climate justice.
Don't you think that's kind of alarming that we keep having to vote for the same thing over and over?
It is alarming, and we should do more than just voting. We should do more than just voting. But it's thanks to those people. It's thanks to people who actually spoke up to defend those environmental areas, the environment, that didn't. We don't have to. We're not today in 2019, 2020 saying, well, redwood forests are just in textbooks. It's thanks to people who actually said at one point, this is where we draw the line, as much as we're just going to save this small area, no? And that's where I'm saying, if we didn't have people, thanks to people who are participating, and thanks to people who are participating now, that some things will be able to be mitigated long term at a short time, and hopefully something better comes along, like anti-capitalist system that would be able to take care of our natural environment.
Why, instead of continuing to vote and putting that energy on voting on the same proposition, reworded, because it's reworded, it's the same stuff, just reworded, why not make that system? Instead of waiting for somebody to make it, why not make it?
I think it's both. Again, I think people can chew gum and walk at the same time. I think you can say, I'm going to vote at the ballot box and continue my work that I have to do until the next time we have to vote, and maybe get out of this system and work with people who are trying to get out of this system. And in that case, I think I'm willing, huh?
You don't think that's unfair to ask every citizen who's trying to survive in the system to also change the system and to also vote and to get educated on it while trying to survive? Like, let's think about this. I work on the clock, I'm 40 hours a week, but it's really more than that. If you consider getting ready, commuting, most of my day is gone just working. Then I have to find a way to feed myself, pay bills, do laundry, clean. On top of that, research what I'm going to be voting on. On top of that, organizing with people. On top of that, pushing for people to get and help them and and I don't want to say educate them, but align them with resources or tell them, hey, you have these resources available to you. How long do you think people can continue to do that?
I think that there are many ways today that you can trust groups, circle of friends. That I help and support about 15 people who trust my judgment, who don't have the time to look into this stuff, who say to me, Eduardo, I'm coming over. I want to fill this ballot out with you because I don't have the time. Or if you really care so much and want me to fill it out, come over and help me out with it.
Then they shouldn't vote. You're voting. You just multiplied your vote by 15.
If you trust someone, if you trust your friend to do it for you, if you have a family member that trusts, that's why do it together. And if you have pretty much on the same line of thinking, it's so much easier today. And people don't even have to find those buddies. They don't have to find those buddies. You can just go on to many voter guides today. There's no excuse. I understand people are tired. They're, a little bit desesperado. ¿Cómo se dice eso? Like,
desperate. Overwhelmed?
No, tú sabes que no se traduce igual. Desesperado no es así. Es como just like, just over it. Like, overwhelmed, quizá.
I said that.
But I understand, and that's why there are organizations today, and you can have multiple voter guides. That people do this stuff. Like, people do get paid to do this stuff, and I think it's responsible for everyone to do it. But if you really are that tired, if you really don't have any time, which again, some of this stuff comes out even a year before the voting time comes. There is time between that time and some stuff can be chosen. Some stuff can be read on even within a year.
So here's what it's going to come down to, though. I don't trust anybody else making a decision for me. I don't trust voter guides. I believe that I need to make it. And I believe that every person, if your vote really matters, it needs to be your vote.
I understand that you are very cynical about people's voting choices. But I have a question for you. What did you make of my appeal for at least the environment and how some of these things are just not even, what do you make of my appeal for that? I'm curious.
Without hurting your feelings, I think it's a joke. Because again,
you think it's a joke to save areas of land, or what is a joke?
You're choosing to go about it, Eduardo. The fact that you think that the only way to save the land is by voting on it, I think it is a joke.
But I guess that's what I'm, in the same way that you don't want to be mischaracterized with saying, like, I'm not saying that voting doesn't matter. I'm saying voting matters. I'm also telling you, I didn't say at any point here that voting is the only way, right? I'm telling you it's one way of many other ways. But today, in this episode, we're discussing voting. So I'm just concentrating on that. So I'm asking you again, what do you think is a joke in my appeal?
Because the amount of propositions that have come up to save the environment that people, because again, we're only focusing on voting. Remember, that's what you said. That's a focus of this talk. The environment is worse off if it wasn't than before. Wars have been fought for the environment. and you're really fucking it over. And it's all through voting. All of these things have gone through voting, Eduardo. All of them. You know, this morning or yesterday, I woke up to a message telling us that right now, because of COVID in the United States, there's been a meat shortage. It's a PBS special. And so Nicaragua has become the third largest exporter of meat to the United States. And the companies that are buying this meat have laws and have agreements with Nicaragua that it has to be ethically sourced. This meat is not ethically sourced. Indigenous people are being killed and pushed out of their lands for cattle ranches. And PBS reached out to those meat Thomas Farms, and I can't remember what the other two were. And they said that they were going to continue to buy meat from Nicaragua, even though they were just provided with proof that these meat were not ethically sourced. So we voted to make sure that our food was ethically sourced. And the companies say, oh, we do it. But they're buying it from a country that's not doing it and is refusing to continue to do service with them because why? Because there's a need for meat in the United States and we have to give people meat. So we're going to be willing to do business with the person that's not following our own laws. And we voted on this. We voted to remove the label from meat packages that say where the food originates from. So people can't even tell where their meat is coming from. We voted on that. So again,
there are many flawed propositions.
So
I understand that. So I'm not naive to know that.
You want me to show
but
up?
I said
to vote
down the list of a ballot are many propositions. There are many, and there can always be in every year or every 2 years, whenever I think California, I forget every 2 or 1 every year. I think it's every 2 years. But there's always some proposition, some measure that directly affects the way that our society functions and can create a buffer for us to have some resources, to have some food on the table, or some resource for us to have some healthcare, some health issue related problem to be taken care of. And so even just like Proposition 17 is like one of the other things is to restores the right to vote to people convicted of felonies, returning citizens, even giving people a chance to vote. I mean, it does directly affect people the chance to be able to be restored that right.
All right. So let me ask you a couple of questions. One clarification and then one question, because you post a lot of propositions for me. So
Sí.
If I told you I'm going to vote only in this one prop because I think this is the only prop worth voting for out of the, let's say 50. I mean, it's never that many, but let's say 50.
Right.
Would you then think me a better citizen?
I mean, you're asking me, so.
Yeah, you, viewers,
all right.
please. Eduardo, I'm not going to feel attacked or anything. I'm asking you.
I personally would not be satisfied, but the one vote on that one proposition, if it makes you vote for just that one time, there is at least one more percentage, one more little grain of that vote to that. Again, I would love to discuss some other time, and we do on what's left, on other things that we can do besides the ballot. But in this episode, we're discussing voting, and yes, I would think that it would make at least a difference there.
But see, I would say that was a waste of my time. I might have as well not voted. And the fact that you're okay and you're willing to accept the one.
Eduardo is personally not satisfied, but Eduardo would be all right if you just at least. If you at least would just vote for one, whatever. It's like not the thing I would be satisfied with. It's not what I think that your duty should be as a participating individual in our society. Pero yeah, si así es, así es. If that's how it is.
So I'm going to now propose something to you because you told me about, my solidarity with the worker. What if I told you that my refusal to vote had to do also with the fact that the people whose voice you think is so important to be heard isn't actually heard because their ballots are refused at the voting, because the way that our system is rigged to not actually account for their vote?
San Francisco has one of the most cleanest, not cleanest.
I don't care about San Francisco. I'm talking about our system. I'm talking about our system. If you want to sit here and talk particular things, then we're fighting over grains of sand at this point. I'm talking about
you live in San Francisco, and as a non-voter, I'm trying to convince you. But yes, if you want to talk about the larger system, I agree. There's lots of fraud. There is lots of tampering. I'm not in disagreement with that, and I'm not sure exactly for every individual state aquí in the USA. I doubt that everyone's vote is being counted, unfortunately. I doubt that there are uncorrupt officials trying to count every vote. No? So I'm not going to argue there. I think that there is a lot of election fraud and tampering. So yeah.
I am someone that's very demanding, Eduardo, and I expect it all or nothing. I expect the best or nothing. And this is not even when it comes to politics or voting. Lipson can attest. I've always been the person that I want. If I can have the nicest car, I'm gonna get the nicest car. If I can have the nicest purse, I'm gonna get the nicest purse. And this is where my capitalism plays into. I want the best, and whatever I have chosen for me, I consider the best. I do. Ojos de mama zorra. Okay.
Yeah.
And because I come from that, is why I cannot get myself to vote in a system that to me is not the best. That to me is, it's just, I can't. I cannot get myself to even, you're right, Eduardo. There's voter guides. I could read. I'm knocking down the system, and I'm not taking even the time to go and read up on it. And the reason for it is because I don't think it's worth my time. And the best way that I think I could summarize kind of where you and I are coming from, because I love you dearly, and there's going to be a lot of things that we're going to stand together and things we're not going to stand with and together. In this, I will say, Eduardo, it takes more than one battle to win a war. Your battle will be the voting. My battle will be in the streets. And we'll tackle it that way.
My battle is in the voting and on the streets.
That's fair. And for those of you that don't want to vote, partake in the streets. I think it's more important personally.
In the end, it's up to everyone. No, there are some places where in Australia, for example, you must vote. It's part of.
They're really.
Did you want to say something, Andy?
Just that the reason that this voting system exists is to get people off the streets. You can't walk and chew gum in this situation. I don't agree with Gema on the idea that it's because people are too busy. It's because the voting system is a statement to workers that will take care of it. It will be taken care of for you. This is going to be how change is going to happen. Actually, workers will have to think what Gema's calling that capitalist way. It's not a capitalist way to say, no, I deserve better. That's a very socialist thing for a worker to say about themselves. Capitalism has got workers to say to themselves, I'm going to get shit. That's all I'm ever going to get. And maybe I can get less shit if I just behave. And the fact is that the voting system is made to tell workers, sit tight. We've got this covered for you. You don't have to do anything. We'll do it for you. So that's the story of Obama. The organization that I was part of, the ISO, collapsed because it said that the vote around Obama was going to be the kickoff for a massive struggle. In fact, it was the opposite. Because people expected and thought Obama was going to deliver, they waited. And then when Obama didn't deliver, and when instead he went on the attack in terms of expanded from 2 wars to 7, or when he went on the attack on immigrants, or when he helped pay off the banks $1 trillion, right? And then and helped people lose their homes, instead of fighting it, workers and left defended him doing that. So this voting system is designed to get us to accept our punishment and our obedience and essentially accept the dictatorship we do live under. We don't really live in a democracy. We live in a dictatorship. And this voting system is made to disguise that and make us essentially become accomplices in it by voting in it, by saying, oh, I voted for that, so I guess I got to accept it. So, in fact, I agree with Gema. If you are for building in the streets, if you are for building independent, then the best thing you could do, the part of that fight is getting out of this voting system altogether and finding a place where your voice will actually matter and won't be used to screw you, which is what the voting system is.
Go vote. Vote on Tuesday. I'm sorry, Eduardo.
This was
no, it's okay.
Never for me, man. I'll tell you.
What I think I just will say is I'll respond to Gema or what she had said earlier. I think where I agree with Andy is just that capitalism has been in many countries, and in for much as people like to point out, this is one thing I tell my friend Jake. He's always talking about socialism not working and how it didn't work in Venezuela, it didn't work in North Korea, it didn't work in China, it didn't work in Cuba, etc. And it's always pointing out the countries that look horrible. And I always say, if you want to do that, if you want to use a country as an example, capitalism exists in way more many countries. So many countries. I might as well just pick out any country I want and use it to my advantage and tell you, look how capitalism didn't work. I honestly think that if we look at, you're not satisfied and you're a capitalist and this is a capitalist country and you yourself are not satisfied. I'm not satisfied, but for a different reason. And you are not satisfied. So, and many people are not satisfied, by the way, more than just you. And I just don't see, I can imagine a world in a capitalist system where, as you say, Gema, where voting won't matter. I think this voting is just sort of a Band-Aid. That's how I see it. I know Andy criticizes heavily on it, and he can come at me for attacks. I hate to admit it, but yes, I do see them as Band-Aids, and they're not solutions. That's why I'm not for just the only thing that you can do is vote. But I don't also see a brighter future in capitalism where your vote will matter. I don't think it'll ever exist. I will continue to think, as long as there's a capitalist system that I live in or that I'm a part of, that it still will only be Band-Aid measures, Band-Aid cures, Band-Aid taking care of the momentary. I honestly, that's how I see it. And that's why I encourage people, our audience, who are mostly skeptics of Democrats and Republicans.
Somewhere in the middle.
I do encourage them just to sort of, look at where I don't judge people who vote for Biden, but I get why they would vote for him. I don't know if that will matter. That one I can honestly say with, but at the local level, I do think that there are things that we can try to prevent from long-term damage. And that's the only thing I appeal for.
You know what I would be interested in, Eduardo? And I this would get me to vote. If I saw some young, different faces in these ballots, if I saw names that I haven't seen in years before, that would get me more excited, I think.
What do you mean by that?
I don't know, and I admit to the fact that I'm very ignorant in this. I don't know if Nancy Pelosi's voted to her role or not, but I feel like she's been in that same role for like 2 generations at this point.
We've done that with Ilhan Omar and AOC and the latest round of new faces. So I don't think it's produced anything other than more lipstick on the pig.
Well, eventually you put enough lipstick on it, it's at least red. It's a different
at least red. Jesus.
I mean, it's just a term.
She said, at least put some more lipstick. She said it needs more lipstick, Andy.
No, and again, and this is where, to tie it back to what your guys' theme usually always is in this episode. After living in Nicaragua, I don't believe in socialism. And granted, that's not real socialism. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. It's not real socialism.
Can I say one thing about, and this is unfortunate, I don't think you can have real socialism without real working class democracy, which means not this proposition crap and every 2 years, but the thing you're talking about, Gema, at all levels throughout working class society, which is people are deciding together how their society runs and how they work and things like that. If you don't have that, I don't care what you call it, it ain't socialism.
Yes, we agree with that. But my biggest argument to this show was best summarized by a friend of mine on Facebook that stated, and I'm paraphrasing, I'm not going to do it justice, that said he's sick and tired of hearing all the liberal leftists pushing socialism when they have never lived in Venezuela, they have never lived in Nicaragua, they have never lived in Cuba, and to stop telling us how to live and run our countries, because everything is nice and pretty from the comforts of your own home. And that made me realize how, when people say we need to stop telling people how to fix their problems, we need to stop telling them what they're doing wrong, we need to give them resources to fix their own issues. I realize that's exactly what a lot of us are doing in the comforts of the Western world. And granted, I'm flip-flopping back and forth a lot. And I do that because, again, I've lived in the United States. I've lived in Nicaragua. I've seen both shit. And that's why I'm telling you, Eduardo, I have this fantasy world in my mind. And you're right. It's a fantasy. But because I've lived in a socialist and quote-unquote country, and I've lived in a very capitalist country, and I'm not happy with either one, I have to believe that there is a third option. And I have to believe that I can make that third option happen if I organize enough, if I'm out in the streets enough. And that's why I do it. I don't really do it because I'm pushing socialism, because, again, I'm definitely not doing for capitalism.
But I guess I'm not sure why you say that, because Ortega, just because he puts on socialism on the name, doesn't mean that anyone, I can say I'm Kevin, it doesn't mean you're socialist. It's still a capitalist system.
Because that's not how it started. That's what it is now. That's exactly where it is now. But if you go back to the revolution, and I see movies, and I've talked and I've heard interviews of people that were part of the movie and that were actually forming a socialist country, and the things that they were doing were in line with the socialists. You can argue U.S. intervention. You can argue they came and fucked it up. They made it so that they couldn't continue to build on what they were doing. But then, let's be honest, we don't live in a vacuum. We're always going to be victims of the outside world. And if you're telling me that the reason why we can't be successful in socialism because someone's going to come and intervene, and I can't stop that, then I'm not even going to go that option. I'm going to look for a route C. And I don't have the name for it yet, Eduardo. I'm still concocting in my imaginary mind. But I have faith that I have to do something, because I have hope just like you. I want this world to be a better place. Like, I want trees. I want people to be able to live comfortably. I want everyone to get healthcare. What were the other things you were talking about? Proposition 22?
Where workers' rights, limited workers' rights. I'm not naive.
I want everybody to have that. I do. I just don't think it's going to be this way that's going to happen.
I'll stop there. I think we can all have a final statement.
No, but you guys should do it. Again, I'm not telling people this is the way to go. I'm telling people, if you want to vote and you believe in it, do it. Voting is very important. I'm not going to sit here to say that voting is not. It's just understand the system you're voting and partaking in, and be a smart voter.
Did you want to respond to what Gema had said, Andy?
Gema and I have talked about this thing that is called socialism, and whether it's in Venezuela, and the left has a lot of hangups of giving it cover, for giving it some kind of red gloss to it, and saying there's some sort of partially flawed working class society that lives there, and it's a lie. So I actually understand where Gema's coming from when she says "F that." I think the left has to be like Gema, which is go for it all, and not be satisfied with scraps. And what we want is workers running society. We want an end to the profit system. And that will happen by the dictatorship of the capitalists being replaced by the dictatorship of workers. And that dictatorship requires working class democracy. If it doesn't have it, it can't work. Not because it's nice, but because it's the only way such a dictatorship of the working class could function, which is mass working class democracy where we get to decide collectively what we do. And I actually think Gema's starting to do that, not as a worker at her job, but in finding other people who are who also are trying to make change, but they're not, well, at least Gema is not caught in the spell of bourgeois democracy, of bourgeois voting, which is trying to tell you, sit tight, we got this, we'll take care of it, which is what happened with her and Obama, which is why she looked at it so much. But then when she saw what a deep and bitter lie it was, she was like, fuck that. And I think the difference between her and the guy who said, I'm voting for Mickey Mouse is, the guy who's voting for Mickey Mouse has given up, which I get it. I get it. He's just, I'm going to vote for Mickey Mouse and screw it. And I don't think Gema's given up. And I think it's more than just a dream you're talking about, Gema. I think you do have a vision of it. You're thinking it should look something like what you're doing with the people you're organizing with. And I think it's true. It needs to look something like that. It needs to be democratic. It needs to actually feel like all your voices matter. If it doesn't, then it's horseshit. I don't care what you call it.
Gema 2022, 2024.
I won't vote for her.
What?
Hell no. Not one of those new brown faces to represent. No, thank you.
I won redhead for you, to appeal to the white.
I think I'll just say that I believe in a system. I think people have heard me say here before that I have unresolved issues with socialism, and I'm a left libertarian, and I do have a lot of distrust in a capitalist system. But my talking point is, where is this revolution? Where is it? And do we have the momentum for it? And if not, there are things that are happening right now that need to be taken care of until that happens. And I don't think people are going to be able to join a revolution if they don't have their bodies taken care of. They're feeling safe. If they don't have some form of feeling like they can try to take on a revolution, then they're not going to participate. You're not going to have, people's needs have to be met. And even if those are Band-Aid measures. And so I do ask for people to think beyond the ballot box, yes, but don't forget that there are these Band-Aid measures of tenant rights, of rent control, healthcare, workers' rights, environmental justice and mitigation on the unhoused population that exists in San Francisco that needs to be created, with the need for more shelters to be created for them. There's just so much that we can just try to put tapar estos hoyos, plug these holes, to just keep this boat afloat until there's another boat that we can all move on to the next one. But until then, I'm just saying, everyone, hands on deck, like put your hand on a hole. And what Gema's doing is, I'm not putting my hand on one hole, and Andy's like, I'm not putting my hand in this hole, and I say, okay, what can you do? You're not going to force someone either. So I say, put your hand on these holes, and let's hope that this stays for a while until there is this other boat that we can hop onto.
And I did not say she's not going to. She did say, I'm not going to put my hand on the holes. I'm going to go build that boat.
Thank you. I didn't want to cut him off, but I was thinking the entire time, what are you talking about? I'm building a fucking 10-foot liner over here, talking about little pedal boat. Exactly. Hell no.
Anyhow, that's what I'll say for that, and I encourage people to go vote.
Don't worry, you guys will all fit in my cruise ship.
A capitalist cruise ship.
Oh,
they'll have all day buffet.
You guys know, and I read it somewhere, that seniors opt to live in cruise ships because it's free healthcare.
You were telling me that. I didn't know this.
Did you know that,
I didn't know about healthcare. I know that senior folks do go on cruise ships a lot. Yeah.
But it's because of that, because you get a free medical thing, supposedly. That's what a customer told me.
I thought it was the shrimp buffet.
And then they start dying because of COVID. No. They do. Don't you know so many cruise ships? So many people died off these cruise ships recently?
Yes, I've heard about deaths from COVID. I've heard some news stories about that recently.
You guys got so dark so quick. Damn it.
Hi, Andy. All right. Good. Anything else, Gema? Final statement?
No, I was just saying that voting is very important, and that having your voice be heard is very important. Those cliches that we hear, have your voice be heard, is not a cliche. It's very important. It's just, I think it's so important that you shouldn't be throwing it around willy-nilly. You should use it so it really has value, where it's really appreciated. That's what I'm going for.
Well, this was an interesting episode, no?
I don't know how we're going to edit this shit. Lipson, I'm sorry. We're going to cut so much.
No, I didn't realize this is what the episode was, but that's what this episode was the two of you. So it's the way it is.
We can do it. Eduardo, you and I will cut everything. We'll make this like a 30-minute video. Don't worry.
Yes.
That's a mistake.
Okay. That does it for this week's episode. What's Left is a weekly political podcast / channel challenging the mainstream left. We post information about our topics and our guests on the episode notes wherever you found this episode, or on our blog at what-s-left.webnode.com. And you can find past episodes to this podcast / channel there and connect with us. I remind folks, please, if you like anything you have heard here, please share your favorite episode, rate, review, subscribe, and turn on your notifications on any of our 6 platforms on Spotify, iTunes Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, Bitchute, or YouTube. And if you would like to give us some feedback about something you've heard or suggest something for us to cover, contact us through our blog. I'm Eduardo Abarca with Andy Lipson and Gema Sotomayor.
Hey, thanks, Gema, for doing this today, and hopefully we'll see you again.
Thank you guys for having me. Always a pleasure.
Right. Wash your hands, go vote, and put on your masks to save lives. I did.
That's down to you, Lipson. Put on your mask, okay? Keep your white germs away from me. It's because of your germs.
That's going to get on the episode, I'm afraid.
It's because of your germs that our indigenous population has been wiped out. Wear your fucking mask.
I'm staying out of this one.
That's a good one. I love it. I got to cough. I would cough, but I don't want to waste it without coughing on Gema.
Jesus.